$300,000 is what we have to build our dream collection. Curating a collection that tells a story of Black art spanning a century, filled with artists who have shaped history and culture, telling the story of how Black art has evolved from the 1900s until now. I know that sounds like a dream, right? Well, I'm not just talking about it, I'm doing it. Welcome to the first video of my fantasy art collection journey. In today's video, I'm gonna be pulling back the curtain to share how the research that I've done so far, history and the context that I've peeled back are shaping everyday decisions that we'll be making in building this collection. Look, I'm talking about real discoveries. I'm talking about finding out that two major Black artists that I've known about for so long were actually married, and how that completely shifts my perspective on their work. This is about discovering and building a collection that tells a bigger story, a story I really want you to be a part of. But it's not only for my imagination. We're gonna use this together as a teaching tool in how to build a collection that each artwork acquired lends to the entire collection. How each artwork is a broader decision, inclusive of aesthetic desire, cultural context, figuring out if the artist belongs in the theme of the collection, thinking about taking that $300,000 and leveraging it, and leveraging even the artwork we buy as financial tools to buy more artwork, and figuring out how that will actually work while still keeping our collection together, ensuring that we're optimizing for taxes and insurance and planning for future generations as if this collection is actually real, thinking about all of these things while we build this collection. Look, if you're confused, if you don't even know what I'm talking about, before we get even deeper, if you missed my first video, go ahead and watch it. It's the foundation for everything we are doing with this fantasy collection. It explains why I'm doing this and what this collection is all about. But today we're getting to the meat of the research that I've done so far, and I'm sharing some exciting discoveries with you guys. What's up, glorifiers? For those of you who are new here, I'm Mariah Elise, an art advisor and a curator dedicated to making the art world more accessible to everyone through insights, conversation, discovery, and now through fantasy. So let's get to it. So I've been going through this journey. I've been discovering things, and these things keep piling up. So far, we've really dug into the works and lives of some incredible artists who are really beginning to be considerations for this collection. So here's a quick rundown of the artists that I've been really digging into so far, how they're fitting into this story we're telling of Black artists from around the world from the 1900s. Anyway, so the first artist that I started with, Jacob Lawrence. His migration series, it was a no-brainer to start with. We've already seen how his depiction of the Great Migration adds a unique perspective on the North-South divide of America during the 1900s and the migration of African Americans from the South to the northern cities. The second artist that I started looking into was John Thomas Biggers. His murals and his paintings about Southern Black identity bring this sense of dignity and cultural pride to the collection. Now, as we know, Biggers' work was really rooted in Black Southern experience and African heritage, making him a really amazing consideration for this collection. One of my favorites, Clementine Hunter, a self-taught artist whose work documented life on the plantation. She had these vivid scenes, a raw emotional quality to her work that connects deeply with my personal Southern roots. And it felt organic. And I think that's something that we need to focus on, that this is my collection. I'm getting you guys' help, but it's my collection and it has to feel organic to me. Her art really, really resonated with the heritage that I grew up with. We have Wadsworth Jarrell, another key figure in the Black arts movement. Jarrell's use of these bold colors and imagery has been essential in defining the visual language of that period. His artwork brought a sense of empowerment, of movement, and social change, like many of the art back then, too. That's a voice that we will need in the collection. We have Elizabeth Catlett and Charles White, as I mentioned earlier. Discovering that these two artists were married had such a deep layer into their work. Their partnership is essential. It's an essential part of their story, and it would be an essential part of this collection. So as I'm discovering them, I'm realizing, I can't collect one without collecting the other. If I collect one, I have to collect the other to complete this narrative of, their partnership. Then we have Sherman Beck. This was a really exciting discovery because I didn't know who Sherman Beck was. Shoot me down. I didn't know who he was, and I discovered him via an exhibition that Vic Mensa curated, and it was at Kavi Gupta. So as I was I started digging more, and I researched Afrocobra. Of course, if you guys know what Afrocobra is, if you don't, we'll talk about that a lot because it has a lot to do with the early beginnings of the foundation of this collection. We'll talk about Afrocobra and its impact. Sherman Beck's work stood out within this movement. His use of color and his abstract forms makes a perfect fit on the narrative that we're creating, especially in relation to how Black artists ended up becoming abstract artists and how that became more considerable for Black artists. So he adds this contemporary, bold feeling to something that's not as contemporary. So anyway, as you can see, these are just a few of the incredible artists that we've uncovered so far. And the beauty of this research is that it's still evolving, and it's going to be evolving over the course of this year. And with each discovery, we're considering new artists to the mix and constantly refining the story of this collection. And if you want to see the research actually unfold in real time, make sure you join the Patreon, because this is just the beginning. This research is going to go a lot deeper and a lot deeper. And if you watch my research in the Patreon, I did go ahead and get the book that the book is in the other room. I did go ahead and get the book that I told you guys I was going to get, and I haven't dug into it yet, but I'm going to get to that this week in the Patreon in the research. So let me go into why I'm building this collection just a tad bit. So why did this even all start? From the very beginning, I knew I had to be intentional with this. I wasn't going to just collect random art. I wanted to build something meaningful, a collection that truly reflects the Black experience across history. I decided to focus on Black artists between 1900 and 2002, a century of culture, of movement, and history. And I just needed to understand. I want to understand that period more myself. And I'm using collecting as a tool of research. And I'm documenting the research process every step of the way, recording myself research and giving it to you guys. So I started organizing everything. I started from the beginning, organizing my project board on Monday.com to track the artists, their key works, exhibitions, where they were born, when they died, where they lived, where they worked, to understand their influences, all of the things, to keep track and to make connections. I gave each of them little tags. So if their work was influenced by the South, they got a tag saying that they focus on Southern culture. And I'll be drawing these lines and putting them in dialogue with one another to see who do we need to have in the collection, who can we maybe back away from and say, okay, maybe not. But we'll also be thinking about, after we do this research and we're looking at all of these artists, we have to also determine how much, because we only have a $300,000 collection and we're only buying off of the public domain. And of course, from like I can't give so much information out from like PDFs that I receive, but I'll give a roundabout to make sure we all know if we can afford this actual artwork to add to the collection. With $300,000, we'll probably be considering more prints. So don't shoot me down if I build a $300,000 collection and I have a few prints in my collection. But we will be smart and we will be strategic about this. So I know I mentioned to you guys, one of the discoveries I had was Elizabeth Catlett and Charles White. When I realized they were married, I knew their individual works, but I had no idea about their personal connection. And when I found out, it completely changed the way I viewed their work. And the idea that they were partners in life and in art makes their work interconnected. And as I said before, it would be a disservice to collect one without the other. So that's one of the considerations we're having while we're building this collection. If I can't afford both of them within this budget, then we're gonna have to postpone this or figure out what we're gonna do. This was a huge moment, realizing that these two artists had shared a deep personal connection, and me realizing that I don't want to collect one without the other. I have to collect both of them. Their art isn't just individual anymore, it's interwoven. Their marriage adds to a whole new level of meaning to their work. That's the kind of discovery I want to share in real time. So, that happened in real time. That discovery happened in real time as I was doing the research on the Patreon. The second discovery was, of course, I'm aware of the Black artist movement, but I had never really dug into Afrocobra, which was the collective that really held that together. As I continued my research and I started exploring the Black artist movement, and I began to dig into Afrocobra, which is the collective that changed the game for Black art, I knew about, like I said, I knew about the movement, but seeing the full scope of its influence, it totally blew my mind. Afrocobra's artists weren't just making art, they were creating a new aesthetic, one that spoke directly to Black audiences. They were being very intentional in what they were saying. They used very vibrant colors, they used very bold patterns, they were culturally and a lot of times politically rich symbolically, and they were revolutionary. And this is where things get exciting, because I'm diving into the Afrocobra collective and understanding how it plays such a huge role in defining the visual aesthetic of the Black arts movement. Artists like Barbara Jones Hogue, Jeff Donaldson, and Gerald Williams, they weren't just creating, they were empowering the community through their art. And I think that's where a lot of that sentiment comes from today. And now I can see how Afrocobra's influence is vital to the narrative I'm building that leads to where artists are now. Clementine Hunter and John Thomas Biggers, the Southern Black experience. That's when the research got personal. I grew up in Beaumont, Texas with my family coming from Louisiana. And Beaumont, Texas is on the border of Louisiana and Texas. So I have this connection to the Southern Black experience through Texas and Louisiana. And when I found Clementine Hunter and I discovered her paintings, further documenting her life on the plantation of Louisiana, that spoke to my family's history. And as I dug deeper, realized how important it was to include this narrative within this collection. Black life in those communities is very vital to my family history, and having that personal connection to artwork is really, really important. Her work feels like home. She was documenting the life that I know, the life my family lived in Texas and Louisiana. And then Biggers, with his focus on Black Southern identity, it was the perfect counterpart to Hunter. So I start realizing, man, I gotta make this narrative stronger. So maybe I have to collect both of them, but just again, thinking about, do we have the money, and blase, and how are we gonna do this and how are we gonna do that? So yeah, I also really started digging into the power of printmaking in Black art history. Something I had to dig deeper into was printmaking, which was a technique that was huge in Black art during this time period. It was a way to make art accessible to a wider audience. In fact, printmaking allowed Black artists to spread their message, making sure that their art wasn't just confined to the galleries, but reached the community. So as I was digging, I realized most of the artists within this period used printmaking as a medium. So that began to be important to me, that, okay, it's okay to collect specific artworks, because that also adds to the narrative. So where do we go from here? Well, we're still in the research phase. We're going to be in that for a while. And that's where all the magic is going to happen. Okay, so right now I'm carefully selecting artists and works that fit into the collection and considering them for the collection. And I'm going to continue to do that and add on top of those artists. And I'll be documenting that for you guys within the Patreon. This is the phase where everything starts to kind of fall into place. We have an idea of who we want to put into the collection, and I really want you guys to follow along as we make these discoveries, because I want to make them together so you guys can add to it. Some of y'all are already in the comments telling me to consider specific artists. I'm gonna listen to you guys, and I'm gonna talk back to you guys in the comments. But if you really want to be a part of that, join the Patreon and be a part of it there, because that's where we're gonna have and be able to have real discussions, and that's where you're gonna see my actual research instead of seeing me condense my research down into these 10 or 20 minute videos. I'm posting at least 3 1-hour discovery videos in the Patreon. So that's 3 hours of discovery a week almost. And then I'm condensing that down to 20 minutes here. Next week, I'll be recording more Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday, diving deeper into the research on for my Patreon members. And I'll ask you guys to vote. So if you are on Patreon, make sure you're active there so that you can vote on artists that you want to see me dig a little bit deeper into, that you might have information on that I have not stumbled across, that I don't know yet, books that you think that I should read. As I mentioned, I'm also an art advisor, and part of my work involves helping collectors build collections just like this, with this deep context and the consideration of all of those things. But with this collection in particular, this one is for us, and together I want us to build something truly special that's not just about buying art, but about preserving culture, telling stories, and also using our money wisely, smartly, and leveraging the money and the art that we do have to build a stronger collection. I want to thank y'all so much for following along. I'm so excited about this one. I'm really excited about this. I know that this is an ongoing journey. I'm taking this one very, very, very serious, and I hope I don't let y'all down as I build this collection. I'm actually nervous about it, and I don't really get nervous about things, but I'm nervous about how this collection is going to end. I'm nervous about putting my process out into the world, my actual process of how I do research and how I find things, and how I build and curate collections. So we're doing that in real time. It's fantasy, but it's real. So anyway, I want to thank y'all for being here. Again, y'all, as I always say, it doesn't matter if you're an artist or a collector. I want this to feel like your home. I want this to feel like a place where you feel like you belong, where we can talk about art, we can nerd out about art. Until next time, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share. All of those things. And again, if you want to be deeply involved in this, join the Patreon. All right, y'all. Thanks for watching. I'll see y'all next time. Peace.